Welcome to episode 3, season 2 of Elevated Businesses, where I have conversations with cannabis entrepreneurs. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to Ari Cohen of Doobba Delivery. Ari was the first delivery and social equity license here in Colorado. And as a special week, 420, this is a special episode with Ari unpacking not only his previous operational experience in the global restaurant world, but also how he obtained the very first social equity license here in Colorado and his plans for expanding into the future. So without further ado, let's dive right into the conversation. Ari, how did you get started in cannabis? What is your background? I know you've launched multiple products in multiple different states. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got started.
Sure. So my background's a little unique. I'm a classically trained chef. I went to the French Culinary Institute in Manhattan and worked in fine dining in New York for quite a few years. Was really lucky to work at Danny Meyer's Union Square Café and learn a little bit about hospitality and how to treat your customers and staff and the right way to do things and still be the best in an industry. So that was great training for me. After about 20 years in the hospitality industry, my wife and I decided, and living in right outside Manhattan, that we wanted to change a lifestyle. We wanted to come out to Colorado. I was looking, we were both doing consulting, and I was looking at opportunities in hospitality and cannabis simultaneously. And it's funny, when I decided, I'm just going to look in cannabis and focus on that, I see a lot of opportunity there. Within a couple of days, I had found a great opportunity, networked with some great people in the industry when I first came in here that embraced me and gave me a hand into the industry, and landed a job at Dixie and was with them for about 4 years, launching and scaling operations across a whole bunch of states. So That was really exciting.
What was your role at Dixie?
So I led operations there, and with that was leading our manufacturing operations, compliance, purchasing, science and innovation, manufacturing and distribution.
All of the hats. That is all a lot to take on.
A lot of departments, a lot of people. It was great. Yeah,
awesome.
Very exciting. We had launched, when I first came, we launched recreational sales in Nevada. We were already doing medicinal. We launched recreational in California. We launched medical in Michigan and recreational then in Michigan, and just a lot of that around the country, and also into Canada. Was able to launch products there. So that was exciting. And as you mentioned, did a lot of product development. My background as a chef and doing menu development and product development in food lent perfectly to the edibles and topicals company that I was working with.
Oh yeah,
being able to develop products and a lot of innovation. We constantly did that, used innovation as a weapon, actually is what we used to call it.
Innovation as a weapon. What a statement.
Innovation as a weapon. Yeah.
And in all of those markets that you launched, was like Canada the most unique, or like internally in the United States, California to Michigan? What was the biggest learning curve between all those new markets?
Each one was unique. Each one had its unique learning curve, as you know, because of the compliance regulations. The rules made each one different and gave each one its unique challenges, which was really exciting.
So, absolutely. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the scale. Yeah, the scale of California was great. Being able also to launch a state like Michigan from scratch, where there was no cannabis program, and then we first launched medical, and then launching adult use, which is great. So
okay. Exciting. And then in Michigan, were you like a licensed medical, or were you under the caregiver model?
License. We worked with a partner there, like a licensed partner. Awesome. That manufactured our products was our model. So
awesome. Licensing.
They had a handful of stores. Like yep, and they had a handful of stores. They would manufacture the products, sell it into their own stores, and then across the state into other stores as well. So
awesome. So you were with Dixie for a few years, and then what was next after Dixie?
Launching Doobba. That was
awesome.
Right around this time last year is when we officially launched the company. We started working on it probably 6 months before that, thinking about different ways to do it. We waited for the rules to come out to really, as you know, again, the rules determine what you can and can't do in any given cannabis market or portion of the industry. So once those rules were finalized and written, we could kind of set upon a path of developing a business plan and what we intended to do around the business. So
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So six
yeah,
months of development, waiting for regulations, you know, just a
yep,
waiting game a lot of times.
yep.
And so once
Another
when,
6 months of licensing process after that,
okay, yep,
probably
that was
by
my
the
next
time you
question.
started. Yeah, so the state process was ahead of, let's say, Aurora and Denver, and Aurora came in right behind that, and then Denver in the summertime. So by the time we were fully licensed in Aurora and Denver, it was August of
Okay,
last year. Yeah,
got it.
August 23rd, actually. Yeah,
Awesome. Congratulations. That's so
thank you.
exciting.
Yeah.
So, very first delivery license, very first social equity license here in Colorado. First to market, an entire year of preparation work before you could even, open your doors and start operating. What were some of those challenges to get licensed? I mean, of course, it's a waiting game, waiting for regulations, but are there any other things that really stand out to you?
I think a key challenge was and is in any new market is, these rules, even though Colorado had a longstanding regulatory system, the rules for delivery were brand new. The rules around social equity and transport for delivery were brand new. So just navigating that with the city and the state as it was rolled out and kind of understanding the rules and them understanding it as well and making up potentially for any deficiencies as we kind of moved along. That was great. So that was something that was interesting and challenging as well. Like when I say great, I love challenges. So I
Yeah,
found that part of it fun actually to
such
kind
a
of
problem solver.
navigating. Yeah. Yeah. You know how that is with the compliance and stuff. And it's, the rules is once you understand the intent, you can navigate through the rules.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
And
it's
you
better.
said a really key word. You said transport for delivery. So, some of our listeners are in California. As we know, California is
Hmm.
a very different model for delivery. Do you mind like giving us a step by step on what delivery operations look like in Colorado?
Sure. That's interesting that you could. I had taken some notes around comparing it to California because it is really different. It's funny how where Colorado has probably the best regulatory environment for cannabis, while they have strict rules, it's very transparent. It's very easy to understand. They allow for most things. It seems to be to the exclusion of delivery at this point. Delivery still being something new. There's something to learn there for the regulators. But I think California has the best model in the country for it. They've and I'll make the comparison as I go, I guess, if that's okay.
Yeah, of
In
course.
California, they've fully opened up the state for delivery, allowing delivery in all jurisdictions. Doesn't matter where you live. That's not the case in Colorado. Colorado is jurisdiction by jurisdiction opt in. I think there's only 5 or 6 out of 280 plus that have opted in. The rest of them, half of them probably don't even know that they could do delivery. They don't, it's going to be a long learning curve there and a long time before either all the jurisdictions opt in or there's a change to the rules that just allows for it statewide, which I think would be the best case scenario. Um, I think that's an important aspect to touch on because one of the things I've learned since we started doing delivery, a lot of people have accessibility issues when it comes to getting into the stores, whether it's for choice, they don't want to come to the store, or they really have serious issues and can't come to the stores. They're not being serviced properly. I can speak to 4 or 5 different communities that we service as a delivery company that don't necessarily go to the stores and are thrilled about this, but they can only be serviced in Denver and Aurora currently versus everywhere they live. So that seems to be unfair. There's also people who get injured. That accessibility, I, I go to the store once a week. I work in Denver. I live in Englewood. I break my arm. I can't go to work for a month. Now I can't buy cannabis. So
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense either. There's an accessibility issue there. So I think that would be a huge change. The other thing that's different, or at least that lays out the rules kind of in Colorado, you're not allowed to deliver to commercial businesses or hotels. In California, you are. That makes a big difference. There's a huge tourist population here in Colorado, people coming to Denver and into the mountains and can't deliver to those places. I would say half of our calls that we get are from people at hotels and the other half are people that are in other jurisdictions that don't allow for cannabis delivery or have stores.
Got
So
it.
one of the other things that here the model is for, especially in Denver, is for a third party transporter to work with a store. So we're a no off-premise transporter. We can't set up a warehouse and just deliver from the warehouse like you can in California. We can't set up a pizza truck model and deliver from the back of a truck. We have to partner with a store, deliver their inventory. They're transacting the sale. And we're kind of the third portion of that, three-spoke wheel, let's call it, that brings products to people. Here in Colorado, we also have to own the vehicles, employ the drivers. California allows for drivers to use their own vehicles, be contractors. So those are some of the key challenges that we face.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned, we were talking the licensing fees are exorbitant here in Colorado.
Even as a social equity licensee?
Yeah, for the medical and retail delivery to get licensed at the state and local level cost us $28,000.
Oh, wow. So for both licenses, state and city, because we have a dual
state,
supply
city,
chain.
Yeah, state, city, medical, and recreational.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah, $28,000.
That's an investment.
So it's very expensive. It's a one-time fee. As most expenses that we have, the cars, our insurance payments, most expenses, you and I have in life, they're monthly payments. That's not the case with your license fees. It's a one-time large payment. So
yeah, and then all that upfront cost of your own vehicles and everything else, like you said, insurance. As we know, insurance loves to add that green tax to it too. So just a lot of upfront costs. And just to unpack like the operations a little bit. So essentially, to recap what you said, so there is a retail storefront that is a separate license. They may be medical and adult use, which means they're going to have 2 licenses under that one facility. And then they enter a partnership with you to be the transporter to take that inventory to the consumer. And that retailer is also the one managing their point of sale, their metric, responsible for all the inventory control and cycle counts and things like that. So you're essentially that messenger going from the storefront to the consumer.
Correct. What they call it, like last mile delivery in the industry.
Okay, so, got it.
Yeah, but that's spot on to the process. In addition to our license fees, the store also has to pay for each the medical and the retail delivery permits from the city and from the state level.
My goodness. And and if I remember correctly, here in Colorado, not only do you have to, I want to say the retailer has to have a delivery permit, and then you have the transporter license on top of that. I might be getting state and city mixed up between like Denver and Colorado. So I remember Denver has some pretty strict regulations, like the city of Denver, and transporting in and out and what that looks like. Am I along the same lines there?
Similar, we are allowed to deliver from a Denver store to other communities as long as they allow for delivery. So we could deliver to Aurora or other towns that allow for delivery. There is different fees for each license. So I think we have in total, separate from our MED badges, we have 9 licenses and permits.
Wow.
Yeah. So you have the no transporter, medical and recreational at the state level, delivery permits, medical, recreational at the state level. Same 4 things plus a social equity for Denver, and then 2 more for Aurora. Aurora seems to be have the simplest licensing process model, and they actually had the very low license fees, which were really reasonable. Those were actually Aurora discounted the fees by 75%, as opposed to they discounted the transporter and the delivery fees 75%.
That's really nice.
That's really great. Yeah, and the state and city has not done that.
Yeah, of course. And Aurora was the first city you launched in before Denver?
We were first permitted in Aurora, but actually to date have not made any deliveries yet in Aurora.
Oh, interesting.
So from my understanding, Aurora sits in 3 counties. So there's issues around the taxes there, around the 3 different counties. Our store partner's still figuring that out.
Got it. All the red tape.
So it's tricky.
Always something.
Yeah, and always something. And luckily, like where the city's like, yeah, you could just come deliver. No problem. The accountants are like, hold up a second there. We have to figure this out. And luckily, as I mentioned, the fees are so minimal. Like in comparison, like $700.
Wow, that's really nice.
Yeah,
that's so nice and so reasonable.
State and Denver together, $28,000. Aurora, $700.
Gosh, that's so mind-boggling. Just the
Yeah,
differences from like city to city, county to county, and just trying to keep track of it all. And you being a social equity license and being the first to market, like I feel we were really behind on social equity programs. I cannot believe that it took us this long to even get a program established. I mean, do you mind unpacking a little bit what that program is, what it entails, what those
sure.
benefits are? Maybe a follow up question too is how do you even get qualified to be a social equity status here in Colorado?
Sure. So one of the first steps is to get the actual qualification, and it's what they call social equity suitability. You get that letter from the state, and there's three ways you could get that. One would be, and I might be a little bit off in the details. So there's three different ways you could get it. One is you've lived in the HUD, urban economic development zone, for 15 years between a certain time frame. So that's one way to be qualified. Another, I believe, is to be earning halfway below the poverty line for 2 years prior to the application, which would be very low income for 2 years prior to the application. So I don't even understand how you would be able to afford the licensing
Right.
fees. That one makes no sense to me, but is a qualification that a lot of people would qualify for, probably. Then the third way would be, and that is the way I qualified, the third way, which was you could have an arrest or conviction or asset forfeiture around marijuana, or be the spouse, sibling, significant other, let's call it, like family, close family member of somebody who's had an asset forfeiture, arrest, or conviction. And I personally had a marijuana conviction for possession with intent to distribute years ago. I'm kind of full circle doing what I got in trouble for doing now, is delivering
Funny
marijuana.
how that works.
So funny how that life works like that, right? Yeah, that's the way that I qualified. So that's one of the ways you could qualify. As you mentioned, while there's minimal license fee deductions by being social equity, the city and state, they have laid out some exclusivity around delivery. At least in Denver, the exclusivity is 3 years, um, ahead of anybody else having the ability to apply for permits for delivery. Um, and then for retail, manufacturing, cultivation licensing, there's a 6 year exclusivity. So where Denver had a moratorium on licensing, I believe since 2016, that moratorium has been opened up for social equity licensees for the next 6 years
And
for
you
those
s- and
licenses.
you said something delivery permit for for
Right.
Denver, Colorado. So just to clarify for our listeners, that delivery permit is not your state business license from the Marijuana Enforcement Division. So these are all of
Great.
those permits and licenses that you have, those 9 in total. That delivery permit is just one tiny little piece to that puzzle.
Correct. Correct.
My goodness. Just all the
It
red
is.
tape
And
is just
it's
so
it's not just
mind-boggling.
for cannabis, for any industry. As you pile on regulations, like those regulations have costs associated with them, forms to fill out and things like that, licenses and permits and all that. As you start to layer it on, then you have the cost around administering those programs, um, which increases the license fees and the permit fees, right? So that's kind of the cycle that we're in. A lot of other industries face it. I think definitely cannabis faces it more than any other industry, especially here in Colorado. It's exorbitant, the fees. I don't,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
I
just
think
so
at this
much.
point, a lot of the fees and the administrative work of the MED and the other licensing agencies at the local levels, it should be paid for by the taxes that are captured, I believe,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my humble opinion,
Yeah, I agree.
not from license fees of the businesses.
Yeah,
So,
I
you
absolutely
know,
agree. We need to figure out how to distribute that a lot better, and more
yeah,
transparency in all of those different taxes. And most importantly, helping the people that have been impacted by the war on drugs actually be in the license market and have a foot here. I mean, the fact that Colorado, I love Colorado. Don't get me wrong. I moved here from the Midwest to be here in Colorado, but I just feel like our cannabis market is just a lot of corporate men. And it's just not exactly how I feel this industry should have been built on. And I feel like it's just very corporate. The corporate piece is really just what gets under my skin. And I love to see the innovation and the lower barriers to entry and people being able to actually make it in the market and not have to pay $30,000 to start a business. Because to your point, to qualify for social equity, one of the three qualifiers is below the poverty line.
Two of them.
Two of them.
Well, two of them would be socioeconomic, right?
Yes.
One is you've lived in a financially depressed area for an extended period of time,
Yep.
15 years plus, and the other one is how much you've earned, right? So how can you afford the license fees in those two out of the three
Setting
instances?
up to fail.
Just setting up to fail, and just look at it, from how is this fair? Like if you make that a qualification, it would be like making it that I got to be 6'5". I'm not 6'5", so I wouldn't qualify. I don't even stand the chance.
Yeah.
So there's nothing I could do to change that. So if you're in a position where you don't have money for a good portion of your life, or you live in poverty, but you do have an opportunity to apply for licensing, you have the grit and determination, and maybe you have an awesome idea that consumers will embrace, you can't do it because of the license fees. It's impossible for you.
Absolutely.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
That's if you want to just take away barriers for social equity right now, would be to lower the license fees.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's only 30 social equity licensees in the whole state, and only a handful in Denver. And I would attribute that to the exorbitant license fees.
Yeah, there's just been so much confusion around all of it between like qualifying for social equity, the permits, the state licenses. I mean, I've had people reach out and say, hey, I'm getting a social equity license. I'm like, can you please define this? What does this mean to you? And in reality, it's just they qualify to receive a social equity license, but they haven't received the delivery permit. They haven't partnered with anyone. It's so confusing.
So that's just the first step. That's suitability. That's where we're going back, like to your question on the that's the first step in the process. Costs about $800. That allows you then to apply as a social equity licensee in the state level and at the local level. That letter carries with you to make those other applications. That's where the license fees really start to kick in. I mean, we went the path of no premise transporter.
Okay.
So we don't have any of the expenses around having a premises. And we still spent $28,000 just on the licensing.
Yeah.
So had we done a premises, you add on top of that probably quadruple that or triple that for the premises, even a small warehouse, which if we could do that model, we would probably have embraced it. But again, that's limited here. We have to do the third-party transporter. So, I think if the states, I think the intent is there, the right intent with creating the social. I know the people who lobbied for these things, for these rules, lobbied for this program, the people that wrote these rules, and that are administrating now. They have the right intent. They want this program, the social equity program, to be successful. They want cannabis to be successful in the state. I truly believe that. I think they have a good understanding now from a lot of the social equity licensees, and now that the process has been around for about a year, what needs to happen to make it better and change it. And hopefully they've been listening to us, and they see they know what needs to happen. Hopefully they'll make some changes that will be productive for the social equity community.
Yeah, that would be absolutely great to see, because we need to see more of it. Like I said earlier, I feel like we're just so behind in just seeing all these other programs implement these different strategies and resources and training programs. I think all of that is just so critical for the success of people actually making it in this industry. And it's 420 week, or about to be 420 week. How are you feeling over there? What are you guys doing to prepare for the increased volume?
We're feeling pretty good. One of the favorite holidays coincides with Passover for me, which is also one of my favorite holidays. So it's pretty cool. Double stacking them this spring. So that's awesome. We're going to see what we're still participating in and kind of do some grassroots stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Any specials?
We're excited for it. Probably on 420 we'll do free delivery.
Oh, cool.
Maybe leading up to it. Yeah, we'll do something like that. Turn up the delivery fee or something. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And are you guys partnered in like multiple different retails, or what does that structure kind of look like with your partnerships?
Sure. So currently we've been delivering for Mighty Tree for quite some time. And then we just launched with Seed & Smith last week.
Oh, awesome.
We're kind of doing a soft launch. We didn't make a big announcement about it yet, but we've been delivering with Seed & Smith now. So you could go right on their menu and order right from their retail menu. We've inked a partnership with a company called UTender. I don't know if you're familiar.
Mm-mm.
We did a press release a few weeks ago. They're actually establishing an online platform where we'll have bud tenders, UTenders online that can video chat and transact, kind of like we're doing right now. And on the side of our screen would be the cart, and they'd be able to work through the menu together and transact into the cart. And then we're delivering for this partnership. And that's a partnership between Mighty Tree, UTender, and Doobba.
Awesome.
So that's pretty exciting. And we're also doing something with Realm of Caring that we'll be announcing soon.
Okay.
We're going to work with them and partner with them to offer discounted delivery to their menu, to their members.
Awesome.
So,
just expanding, just all the
yeah,
things and
trying
all
to
the
work with
partnerships.
brands.
That's awesome.
Yeah, partnerships with brands as well, trying to work with different brands that help them kind of communicate delivery to their consumers and see how we could leverage that as well.
How exciting. And
Yeah.
outside of Colorado, do you have your eyes sight on any other states?
Yeah, we're looking back in our old stomping grounds in the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Florida, potentially even Puerto Rico. Those are kind of some key places that we're looking at. And hopefully we'll get to talk about that soon, you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. And
cool.
New Jersey, New York, super exciting stuff. They have really strong social equity programs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you saw with the governor signing that bill, saying the first 200 retail locations will be to social equity folks, which, caused an uproar with some people.
In New York or New Jersey?
That was in New York.
Jersey?
Yeah. So that one specifically
Wow.
was in New York. That happened probably about 2 weeks ago. I'm really excited for it. I think that's how this should be. And so I'm really excited to see New York putting their best foot forward. New Jersey is also doing something similar, but not so stringent on how many licenses will be the first awarded to social equity licensees. They do different bonus programs or not programs, but different bonus points to your application and when your application will be reviewed by the state agency, dependent on if you qualify for social equity, if your facility is in an impact zone, if you're a woman-owned business, things along that nature. So you can essentially stack up these bonus points and then get your application reviewed ahead of the time before anyone else. So
awesome.
Really exciting to see East Coast learning from our mistakes and actually implementing these programs that are just much needed. And so, yeah, with that being said, I mean, I feel like the future in cannabis is looking really bright. I feel like there's a lot of changes happening, federal legalizations in the talk right now with the MORE Act and everything else. Who knows if it'll actually pass the Senate or not, but hey, at least cannabis is out there and talking about it. So with that being said, for the future, what are your 3 wishes for our industry? What do you hope to see? What changes would you like to see? Like, what are your overall hopes for us?
Sure. I'd really love to see more collaboration in the industry. All industries are competitive. I come from the restaurant industry, New York City, one of the most competitive industries in the world, and places to be in it. But it was always collaborative. Your competition across the street and up the block were your friends and your collaborators. And I don't see that I see it a little bit in cannabis, but I think we have a lot of room to improve upon that, both here in Colorado and just nationally in general. We should all be working. We all have the same goal to legalize cannabis. And so we should all be working together towards that goal instead of against each other. I think that's key. And you can see what's happening here in Colorado with the pricing of cannabis and things like that. It doesn't have to be this way. If it was collaborative, it wouldn't be this way, right? It just wouldn't. So they wouldn't allow it to happen. So that's one thing that would be a number one wish. I think change in the regulatory environment, even without the federal legalization. I think there's things that states can do. Colorado could take the lead with that.
Yeah.
Really, looking at the licensing fees, and not just for social equity, like let's just, for sure, yeah, it's a barrier to entry for sure. But for all cannabis businesses right now in the state that are struggling, that's something that could help them instantaneously. Right. So those things I think would be huge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I
mean,
those would be the 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big enough sandbox.
2 main wishes.
like we can all play in it. I mean,
Yeah.
Me being in like compliance and online training and things like that, everyone out there it's never been easier to develop an online training platform and to get your information and education out there. And I always say, I'm like, go out and do it. We all have something to give and knowledge to give to this industry. Like, go develop it, because we can all play together. Like, we can all build ecosystems and partnerships across the entire supply chain, from every aspect, from ancillary to licensed operators, attorneys, all of the things. And you mentioned that your previous experience in New York and working in the food industry, and how you had brought all of that innovative knowledge to Dixie. What were some of those key characteristics that you brought over from your previous experience running restaurants into the cannabis space?
Putting structure together. Um, Restaurants could be chaotic, especially in the midst of a service, but they all have like a certain structure and rhythm to them. Bringing that to cannabis, bringing structure really, especially when you're scaling operations and going into multiple states and multi-unit operations, consistency is very important.
Absolutely.
Putting the structure together that you could operate consistently, execute consistently across different markets with different partners and different teams, that was like a key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Standardize to scale. Like, you gotta.
Yeah. And then I think also had a lot of global experience before getting into
Okay.
cannabis, opening restaurants internationally and working with teams internationally in foreign languages without translators,
Wow.
getting restaurants opened, learning cultures directly from the people in their home countries. Allows me to kind of work across different levels with all different types of people, really be able to communicate to anybody and 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 make a difference. So
That's
I think
awesome. I don't think I knew
that's kind
that.
of something I bring to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of experience. I worked with when I joined this restaurant group, Pain Quotidien, as a corporate chef. We had 3 restaurants when I joined, and when I left, there was 220 countries.
Wow. Over
So
what time frame?
yeah, 10 years.
Okay. Awesome. Still, that's
Yeah,
insane.
2002, about 2002 to 2014.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
they're still going strong. Yeah, it was a concept that started in Belgium by like a master chef. Started this bread bakery, sold it in Belgium, brought it to New York. We turned it organic. We were actually one of the first like certified organic bakeries
Wow.
globally, and also in the States, and certified stores, organic restaurants, basically. Yeah, it was really exciting. I've opened restaurants in Tokyo and Istanbul, London, Paris, Brussels, things like that. So
How
it's really
cool.
cool.
I
Been
did
a
not
part of
realize
the
that.
restaurant openings globally. Yeah, that was a key to my background, and did a lot of like multi-unit consulting after that
Okay.
when I first had my daughter, and was doing a lot of consulting when we had my child and our child, and that allowed me to still get to travel and work with these different great brands, but kind of spend more time at home and with my daughter. Yeah, that was my background before cannabis.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so that standardizing and scaling aspect, especially globally, like, what did that look like? SOPs, training, software? Like, what did that structure look like?
Training and SOPs.
Yeah.
A lot of training. We were training heavy. Training and follow up to any training is the follow up behind it, and just constantly auditing the standards, setting standards, and then auditing to those standards constantly.
Yep.
Working to improve the standards, constant improvement. So
Love it.
it's something that we always worked on. Yeah.
And something cannabis really needs. I feel like at least the things that I see, usually the either internal or third party audits sometimes is missing in the cannabis space. The other thing I see a lot of times as well is SOPs and things like that. Like, sometimes people develop SOPs for the licensing process. And as we know, for the licensing process, it's heavy in legal jargon. You need to quote or cite different policies, but actually translating that into your operation and being able to just hand over a document to your team member and be like, follow this X, Y, and Z playbook instead of SOP. Maybe that playbook is more in layman's terms, and you digest those regulations and have screenshots and things like that in that document, opposed to a true licensing SOP. And that's something, at least I see, that's very much missing within our industry. A lot of operators just think the licensing SOPs will suffice, and not actually deconstruct these workflows and put it into layman's terms, and then in addition, do training and auditing on top of that. So that experience is just so crucial for our industry.
For sure, it was key to success, understanding the need for compliance. My background in organics and gluten-free and in the airport space, when I came into cannabis, having to deal with compliance and regulatory bodies was just part of my background. And in that, you mentioned like third party auditing. That's something having been subject to inspections by like New York City Health Department. And when we were in the airport space, we were inspected by the TSA, the Port Authority, the Health Department,
Oh,
Delta
wow.
Airlines, our own auditor. We using third party auditors, whether it was in the restaurant space for health inspections. You could always look in the mirror. It's like you're auditing. You could always self audit, but it's like looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
You're going to miss flaws. You're going to miss the flaws you don't want to see or that you forget about. It looked great. Everything looks great. I self audited A plus. Health inspector comes or whatever it is, and it's a B minus. And it's, you can't always count on yourself or your own staff to do that. You need to work with outside parties, make sure you're doing things properly. Usually people that are, experts in the rules around certain aspects, whether it's around food safety or health or GMPs or things like that, or even cannabis regulations, they're more abreast of the rules. They stay on top of it. They just help you.
Yeah.
I always, in my career in food and beverage in New York City and nationally, we always use third party health inspector consultants and things like that around what we did.
Yeah, just different perspectives. You always need those different perspectives. And I have no problem saying I am not an OSHA expert. I'll refer you to one. I know a great one, but I'm not going to take on that lead. And I think that's another big thing in cannabis. We just sometimes, this is just human nature. We don't want to admit we're wrong. But in my perspective, if I don't know something and if I'm not 100% sure on it, I will for sure tell you, and I'll let you know that I am not 100% sure on it, because this is your business, this is your license, and I'm not going to put that at risk ever. And the audit portion is just such a critical element that I feel like our industry really needs to start becoming a bit more mature on. Whether you do want to do internal audits, that's a great first step, but to your point, like, you're gonna miss your blind spots, and you need those other perspectives. So previously you said that one of your other wishes is more collaboration within the industry and not so much of this competitive nature. What were some of the strategies that you did in the food and restaurant world to help create a more collaborative environment?
I don't know that anything that I necessarily did in my tenure created a more collaborative environment. I can't take credit for that. I think it was just natural to the industry that I became a part of in the city and globally. I think you ate at each other's restaurants, you shop, when the health department showed up, you called the restaurant across the street. If my ice machine didn't work, I could get ice from you across the street. It wasn't, I wasn't looking at what you were pricing your menu at. I'm gonna undercut my menu so you can make less money. This is like things like that I'm seeing happening in cannabis. I didn't see happen in the restaurant industry. There was a lot more collaboration. It was very competitive. I wouldn't want to take the competition away. I'm a very competitive person, so that makes it boring. Yeah. But there should be cooperation in that, right? Yeah. I don't want to win at your expense.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'd rather win knowing that I'm competing against you and you're doing as an awesome job as I am. And I'm just, a little bit of luck maybe and a little bit of more grit and determination got me past that. But yeah, it should be a hard competition. Having worked for one of the best restaurants in New York City and in the world, we were very competitive, but we were collaborative.
Yeah.
With our sister restaurants and with our, competition across the street, basically.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
I think it's very important.
Yeah.
So, and I get to see that, the giving back to the community. I think cannabis is very good at giving back to the community. It would be great if the state, at the state and local level, they gave back to cannabis.
Yeah.
So that cannabis was free to, like we were talking about, relieving some of the regulatory hurdles and the financial expense around licensing and things like that. That would really help operators be able to be more generous in the community. And I think they would.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that competitive aspect too. Like, if I'm going to win, I want to win against the best. So like, don't just
Yeah.
like, I played soccer for
Yeah.
13 years and like state level and all of that. So like, I feel that competitive spirit for sure. Just like,
Yeah. And there, so when I was I'm going to date myself, in 1999 with Union Square Cafe, we're number one restaurant, New York City and in the world, and they held that for multiple years. But number two was Gramercy Tavern, which was owned by the same person. It was it was our brothers and sisters that we were competing against that were number one and number
awesome.
two. I don't think that we wanted to have it any other way. I'm sure everybody else wanted to be number one and
Yeah,
number
for
two,
sure.
but for us, competing against our partner, our sister restaurant, was and winning. And even when we didn't, like, that was the best feeling. So
Yeah.
I think, I think it's starting to happen in cannabis. I think companies are working together. There's strength in numbers. So I think we do work together when it's in our benefit and we want to see rule changes and things like that. But I think it needs to be more just natural
Yeah.
collaboration.
Yeah. And not
So,
a race to the bottom. I mean, I, and this whole race to the bottom happens in every single market. It doesn't stop. And I mean, in previous episodes, I've had conversations with other guests about how with the race to the bottom, I don't know why it's happening. It's like, is it an oversupply? Is it too many licenses? Like, I believe to a certain degree, when new markets open up, you can really make your best profit margin the first 12 to 18 months. And it's just a basic economic supply and demand situation.
mhm.
But it's just, this keeps on happening with this race to the bottom. In Colorado, back during my operation days, 2017, our price per pound was like $800 a pound, and our grow cost plus excise tax was like 710. So we're making $90 net profit. And the only thing that changed that back then was new microbial regulations that were required, and pretty much everyone failed the microbial regulations, and then the price shot up to like 2,400 or something like that nearly overnight. And I just don't know what the solution is for all of us just racing to the bottom. Do you have any thoughts?
Sounds like the gas pump.
Yeah.
Sounds like what's happening at the gas
Yeah.
pump. We wake up one day, there's new regulations, and gas is triple what it
Yep.
was a year ago, right? So, the whole race to the bottom part. I mean, cannabis, it's going to be a commodity like coffee.
Yeah.
It's going to be grown at scale, at mass, globally, probably in the same places that coffee's grown. Then there'll also be craft brewers, let's call it craft curers, things like that, like there is around coffee. Um, that's part of the race to the bottom that we're seeing. It's a shame, that we're seeing that, especially as costs are going up. The cost of doing business is going up, but the what is it now? It's less than $400 a pound. So you're saying in 17 it was 800, and then it shot up to
Yeah.
2,400. Now it's 400. Um, you know,
Yeah.
maybe somebody should create like a fair trade market for cannabis in Colorado and says that here's some standard pricing based on standard
That's an
costing.
idea.
you
Yeah.
know, and what drives it? If you ask me, like, what drives it is fear. They see that the bottom's falling out and everyone starts lowering the price on everything. It's out of fear.
Okay.
I think it's fear based.
Yeah.
It's certainly not like success based,
Yeah.
right? If it's a race to the bottom, so like in the restaurant industry, it was, for a lot of people, it was a race to the
Yeah.
top. It was a fight and a struggle and a race to the top, and then a battle to stay at the top of what you were doing in whatever category you were in, right? That's not what's happening. It's not a race to the top
Mm-mm.
here.
No.
It's a race to the bottom, right?
No.
So how do we flip that around? I think
Yeah.
collaboration, coming together, um,
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
that's key, right?
Man, what a
Yeah,
statement. Yeah. Just a race to the bottom because of fear. That is the first I've heard that. So thank you. And I agree. I
you're
mean,
welcome. I don't know. That's just my
yeah.
That's just what I thought about it right now. If I had to think of the reason behind that, why do people do that? It's certainly not out of
Yeah.
confidence
Yeah.
to do that, right? Like, I have confidence in my products that while the market says that an ounce of weed is worth $400, I believe that mine is worth
Yeah.
more. I'm not cutting, that's if everyone had that confidence, it wouldn't be
Yeah.
like that,
Set your own
right? So,
prices for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's just, yeah, it's again, it goes back to that really not a healthy
Yeah.
competition,
Yeah. Absolutely. And
unhealthy. It's unhealthy. When you have collaboration, it's healthy
yeah.
competition,
Yeah.
right? Like with the brother and sister restaurants, we were competing against each other for years to be number one. Unfortunately, one of us was number two and one of us wasn't number one. But that's the definition of a healthy competition
Yeah,
right there.
absolutely. And so with all this talks
Yeah.
with federal legalization, I feel like all of these little microcosms race to the bottom in all these states when federal legalization happens, whether it happens this year, 5 years from now, who knows? I feel like this isn't going to stop. I feel like it's going to continually be a race to the bottom, but it's just going to be a bigger problem because it's going to happen nationwide instead of microcosms by state. And I don't exactly know what the solution is. I don't know if it's licensing caps, if it's not. Like, I don't like licensing caps to a certain degree because I'm about an open market and letting everyone compete. But I just feel like these problems just keep on happening. And if we keep on just adding an extra layer of federal government over it and then the additional taxes they want to impose and things like that,
Hmm.
I just don't know how people survive in the market when you have all this red tape and race to the bottom.
It's going to be a struggle, I think, for sure. And then once the federal rules change, you'll have all these outside companies, the Amazons
Right.
and the DoorDashes and the large retail brands uh, purchasing up. It'll be a lot like there'll be consolidation ahead of that with larger cannabis companies, as we're
Right.
seeing already, buying up stores, buying up businesses. It's really starting to consolidate nationally. Um, and between the United States and Canada, that's going to continue. But once it goes federally legal, that'll happen at a very accelerated pace in a very short amount of time. The bigger companies will scoop up as many cannabis companies as they can in hopes to make themselves more valuable for the Amazons and the other companies of the eBays and the other companies of the
Yeah.
world, right? I think that's what's going to happen, in my
Absolutely.
opinion, for
And I
sure.
feel like
Yeah.
I'm a craft beer drinker. I love small craft cannabis. I love like solventless and rosin and ice water hash and things like that. For me, I feel like if you're going to make it in the license space, you have to like just like niche down and just go after a specific target audience, build customer loyalty, build that brand, and hopefully build some sort of like craft model, whether that's vertically integrated or not. Like, one company that always stands out to me is 710 Labs. Like, 710 Labs has like such a cult following with like their customer loyalty, how
Hmm.
people will just like buy those $80 a gram from them and things like that. Like, I feel like their model has is one that a lot of people should look to replicate, so that way they can make sure that they can survive in the federal legalization and the consolidation when it does happen.
I would agree with that. I think what they're doing in California is great. What they're doing here is great. Yeah, it's quality products, quality brand, quality people leading the way within the brand. I think that makes a huge difference. Um, there's a lot of brands. Some of them are doing it properly, and some of them they're just doing it right. So I think that's a key part. I think a huge change in the regulatory environment and the fees around licensing, especially here in Colorado, just opens the gates for more people to get involved, come up with good, people are, we're creative. Most people are creative, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Um, there's some brands out there. There's some product types. There's some concepts around cannabis you and I haven't even seen or thought
Right.
about yet. But other people are tinkering with um, that they need the opportunity, right? In all other industries, your limitation, like if you're going to start a brewery, it's around the equipment and things like that, not necessarily the
Mm-hmm.
licensing. Sure, if you're going to go start to drill for oil, there's a lot of regulatory rules you got to deal with. But if you're just trying, it shouldn't be harder for cannabis than it is to drill for oil, right? It should be pretty easy. That the fees shouldn't be so high. Going back to the social equity part, if you really want to offer that, taking away these exorbitant fees and making it easier, giving people access to capital, but all they're going to do is use the capital, pay their licensing fees, isn't going to help
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
key, right? And we saw with like the internet boom, millions of people created, .com businesses, created wealth for themselves that wasn't there before. They did that with their, hard work, grit, determination, and creativity. And it cost, you could buy a web address even today for
Yeah.
$2, right? So you could get yourself online and start to register a business in a city for $50. why should it cost 30,000, right? And we have a very simple model. It would have been more if we needed more
Yeah,
licenses.
in
So,
the warehouse too.
right. So, and you
Yeah.
understand, yeah, if you were going to do a store or warehouse, so like even the exclusivity around social equity for stores and cultivate. I mean, does somebody have that lived in poverty for 2 years have $1 million to start a cultivation and build out the facility and the cameras and everything, and then wait to get licensed for 6 months? And
Yeah.
then start the business up and wait to, harvest for the first time to actually have an opportunity to make the first dollar. No,
Yeah.
most people don't
even have the money, and
So,
probably can't even get the funding either because of their background. Like, that's always a really
correct.
big problem with social equity licenses.
Somebody told me that yesterday, that no one will lend or invest in social equity because there's already a preconceived notion around it, whether it's around education or socioeconomic status or criminal background.
Just so mind-boggling.
I would imagine that's true. I believe that's true.
Yeah, I believe that's true too. Like,
yeah, for sure.
just so
Yeah.
absolutely mind-boggling. And we're just at this precipice where we can innovate. Like you said, there's all these products that we don't even know that are out there. I remember when those like nano distillate like came out with where you can just put it's like Ripple with the little and that technology. I remember my mind
like
just
nano encapsulation and stuff.
Just mind blown. I'm just like, this is so cool. Like, we have no idea. I remember back in the day, there was one manufacturer that did this like crazy inhaler with like hash and terpenes and
I saw that.
all those things, like so many different products. And I feel like if you're able to innovate and create all of these awesome new ideas, then you can then also drill down to your target audience. So going back to like that target audience and branding and being able to actually standardize, scale, and build a business, all of those different things come down to the product and how consumers use them. And if you know how your consumers use those products, then you can build a customer loyalty and brand around that. Another company that comes to mind out of California is like Key Coco, who's that woman-owned brand. They focus on the teas, lower dose, and I just think it's just so thoughtful, and I just really love to see brands really like niche down to a specific target, because I do feel that's almost the key, along with like the craft model, to be able to survive in the license market.
I agree. I think so. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ari, where can people find you? Tell us a little bit about your delivery service, where people can get a hold of you, and yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, best way to find this would be Doobba.com. 2 O's, 2 B's. You could Google Doobba also. And once you land on our website, you could easily click to one of our store partners, order delivery right off their menu. That's the easiest way to find us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, right now we're delivering in Denver, soon to be delivering in Aurora. Yeah. So we're breaking down the doors in other jurisdictions, and hopefully sooner rather than later is the plan to get other jurisdictions opened up for us.
Do it. So. We need it. We need more delivery. I know it's out of your hands to a certain degree, but we need more delivery.
Yeah. Well, I would say we were talking about collaboration. There's a lot of collaboration in the social equity community of us working together. There's a group that was created, Colorado Social Equity Group, that brings us all together. So that we're fighting for the same things together.
Where
as we talked about, there's strength in numbers and stuff.
Where can people join that group? Do you guys meet like each week? What does that look like?
I think we meet once a month, and I think it comes up as CO Social Equity Group.
Awesome. So just Google it and they'll find it.
Colorado Social Equity Group.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was started by social equity licensees. It started and ran by social equity licensees here in Colorado.
Awesome. So. Love it. More collaboration. All about it.
Awesome.
Well,
for sure.
Well, Ari, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really thrilled that I've been able to pick your brain and just talk about your experience, and congratulations on all of the success. And yeah, looking forward to have you on again on a future episode.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person soon.
Let's do it.
So, thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
Yeah.